Hi, I'm Saida Garrett, co-writer of Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mr. Mark Tara.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the persons appearing on the program.
Today on Rainbow Country, 299 Queen Street West, the new Canadian documentary about the nation's music station, MuchMusic. That and more in episode 370, so stay tuned for Gay Talk Radio right here on Rainbow Country.
Hi, this is Carol Pope.
Hi, I'm Garrett Conley, author of Boy Erased, a memoir.
Hi, I'm Lorraine Segato.
Hi, I'm Gord Depp with the Spoons. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Well, hello and welcome to a brand new journey through Rainbow Country. As I like to call it, a little gay radio show working to give voice to the LGBT community and beyond. And as always, I am your tour guide through Rainbow Country. I'm producer and host, Mark Tara. By the way, Rainbow Country originates from CIUT-FM in Toronto, and now proudly in syndication on 12 outlets across Canada, from coast to coast to coast. The Yukon, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, the east coast of Canada in Newfoundland, Ontario, even down to Buffalo, New York, and online. Well, thanks to you tuning in, streaming, downloading, but ultimately listening. Together we continue to build Rainbow Country into a nationally syndicated gay radio show, a #1 LGBT podcast on Podomatic.com's Gay and Lesbian chart, as well as being recognized as Canada's #1 LGBT podcast on Feedspot.com. So today, the new Canadian documentary from Canadian director Sean Menard, 299 Queen Street West, a documentary about the nation's music station, MuchMusic. Joining me to talk about 299 Queen Street West is broadcaster, producer, musician, DJ, and VJ Michael Williams. Plus in hour 2, music from LGBT artists, independent artists, voices that we've come to know and love in classic disco, classic 80s, classic house, and on this episode, I'm featuring some classic new wave, some queer jazz, and more. All that lies ahead as we start Journey 370 through Rainbow Country. But first up, a special shout out to Peter B, who listens to Rainbow Country on CKCU-FM in Ottawa. And today, Peter B writes, "With you and everyone, be proud whoever you are. Community radio is important." Peter B, well said. Up next, the Rainbow Country Bookstore. And on this episode, author Lori Green reads from her book, Drag Queens and Beauty Queens, Contesting Femininity in the World's Playground. By the way, Drag Queens and Beauty Queens is available wherever you get your favorite books. And on Amazon.ca, it has a rating of 4.8 out of 5 stars.
New York Avenue, where the party began. Mortimer breathes deeply and gestures broadly with his arms at the now vacant lots and rundown buildings on the west side of New York Avenue. The Saratoga was here, he points behind us. And the Chez Paris Disco. He turns and walks toward the world-famous boardwalk and makes a right on Westminster, commonly known as Snake Alley, a winding back street that connected New York, Kentucky, and Mount Vernon avenues in the old neighborhood. The parking lot to the right used to be the Entertainments Club, the oldest bar on the East Coast. Louise Mack, who loved gay people, owned the building, and the bottom floor was her little speakeasy nightclub, which always catered to gay men. It was one of those places where you had to knock on the door and have a code word to get in. Mortimer continues to walk, looking around, gesturing toward two large parking lots on the opposite side of the street, where the Grand Central Hotel and Studios 5 and 6 once stood before they burned down. He laughs as he kicks an abandoned beer bottle toward the curb. Gay rooming houses and hotels once choked the streets here, and it was all gay everywhere. He turns and frowns as he rounds another corner of the ghosts of properties where it was easy to pick up young men for sex and rent boys, especially in the 1980s. We turn onto Kentucky Avenue, where Snake Alley ends, now a devastated parking lot, as he describes the hotels and gay businesses that used to line the west side of the street. On the corner of Pacific and Kentucky Avenues, on the right-hand side was the coffee mill. On the left-hand side, the Atlantic City Electric Company. Across the street was Kelsey's Restaurant, and what used to be a pool hall and pizza parlor, rooming houses, a little gay grocery store. He pauses and points across the street to a small house, which still has a plant in the window. This is where drag queen Sandy Beach lived. Mortimer points to a little window where he remembers losing his virginity. He shakes his head, surveying the empty space. Turning right on Pacific Avenue, we walk past an empty lot, which was once Lyle's, a gay breakfast place where everybody ended up after staying out all night partying. Two prostitutes walk by, followed by their pimp arguing about cigarettes. Turning right, back down New York Avenue, he summons the ghosts of gay clubs once again, the Saratoga, the Shea, the Rendezvous, where he used to perform in drag, and where he saw his first gay sex inside the club, right on the dance floor. On the right side stood the Chester Inn, its restaurant called the Front Porch, and there was an underground club here called Pukalani with a pool. Across the street was an Italian restaurant, Mama Mott's, where he had his first gay date. It's all gone now. Camp and the queering of Miss America. The corner of New York Avenue and the boardwalk in Atlantic City Beach side is the girls' side of the street, the spot where lesbians congregate to watch the parade and cheer as the cars go by carrying the Miss America pageant contestants. On the opposite side of the boardwalk, gay men stand in front of Ripley's Believe It or Not museum waiting for the parade to begin. This year, there is an added intrigue, since this is the first time an openly lesbian contestant, Miss Missouri Earner Flattery, is competing for the crown as America's ideal woman. Many spectators carry rainbow flags. Some are dressed in drag, men in full makeup, women donning T-shirts with men's chests and muscular arms painted on them. Others wear rainbow kitsch, plastic sunglasses, boas, crystal-studded crowns. Both men and women flirt with local police as they beg to stand pressed up against the parade route and promise they will behave in return. Drag queen Morgan Wells stands in a gown and a headpiece on the men's side. Beside her stands a man shirtless with pierced nipples attached to chains. Gay men congregate, sorted by age and acquaintance, under the marquee of the museum. To their right quietly sits a family with beach chairs and 3 small tow-headed children on their laps. Shoebies, or out-of-towners as we call them, they gawk at the spectacle before them. The convertible carrying the Miss America contestants in the Show Us Your Shoes parade pass in alphabetical order. They wear costumes whimsically representing their states, with shoes held up in the air with one leg as they lean back in their seats and wave to the crowds. Show us your shoes is screamed from New York Avenue crowds as each contestant passes. And as they do, most of them met with cheers of encouragement, waving rainbow flags, while others receive sometimes not so flattering critiques of their tepid presentations. You on New York Avenue now, honey. You ain't in Kansas anymore, someone yells in the crowd. A baton-twirling team from Kentucky approaches. The young girls dressed in rainbow-colored leotards draw near, and the excitement among onlookers builds. They all respond by waving their rainbow flags and chanting, "Twirl, girl, twirl. Twirl, girl, twirl," as they jump up and down and continue to wave their flags. The twirlers, a little disconcerted, perform their number. Flags begin waving and people push in toward the yellow cones along the parade route. Miss Missouri Earner Flaherty is dressed in a blue and white baseball uniform and holding up a pair of bejeweled high-top sneakers. As the convertible nears, the cheers increase. She smiles, but she is demure as she waves. Jean runs toward the car waving her rainbow flag. And though Erin smiles and waves back, she appears a bit awkward with this group of locals, looking for some acknowledgement of their shared identity. The crowd chants, "Show us your shoes." Show us your shoes, not your midriffs. Mimi on first stands at the top of the risers as she enters wearing a 12-foot-long purple bejeweled velvet octopus stole with arms wrapped around her torso and dragging down the steps behind her. Hair high in a platinum blonde bouffant, her lips bright red, Mimi cocks her head, turns, and drops the stole coyly, revealing a sparkling black velvet swimsuit and a gold and purple shell accessories. She struts, turns her back to the audience and winks. A finger goes to her lips as if to say, "Oh my, I'm so exposed." She seems oblivious to her fatness. In fact, she shows a confidence in her superior form, her extra large body jiggling, hands on her hips accentuating her simple frame. Mimi walks down the runway, stopping at the end. She licks her lips slowly, turns, and walks back to center stage, moving her hips slowly to the music. Mimi on first. Contestant number 1 is announced, along with her measurements, 72, 48, 72. The crowd cheers and applauds, and she bends over slowly, paws and bottom to the audience to retrieve her stole. As Mimi is escorted away by Speedo-clad male dancers, the next contestant begins to descend. Farrah Mascara steps gracefully, one stilettoed foot after the other in a sequined red robe. As she reaches the stage, her robe falls away, revealing a red cutout sequin swimsuit, fishnet stockings, and a giant lobster-clawed hands as gloves. She moves her thumbs, pinching the air, flashing an open-mouthed, toothy smile. She shakes her head side to side, her huge hair just seconds behind her. Farrah struts from one side to the other as she makes her way down the runway, ending in a figure 8, pinching claws held high. She shimmies and jiggles her large body, putting one claw to her mouth in feigned embarrassment. Miss Farrah Mascara, contestant number 2. Her favorite food is chicken nuggets. Her favorite color is the rainbow. Farrah squeals and grabs the arm of one of her escorts as the next contestant appears at the top of the risers in a gold lame robe cinched around her waist. Tina Burner descends in sparkly white platform shoes and reveals her swimsuit, white and skirted, with a gold belt and an anchor and gold tasseled epaulets on her shoulders. Tina's ginger hair is coiffed 1950 style, and she holds a captain's nautical cap. Posing, one knee bent, arms by her side, wrist flexed, head cocked to one side, she walks slowly to the top of the runway and puts one white-gloved hand to her mouth as she knocks her knees together and giggles. Tina Burner, contestant number 3. Her favorite perfume is fishy.
Hi, everybody. This is Gino Vanelli. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Up next, broadcaster, producer, musician, DJ, and VJ Michael Williams joins me in conversation to talk about the new Canadian documentary 299 Queen Street West. But first, I get his take on the musical legacy of the late, great Sinead O'Connor. Michael Williams, hi, how are you?
I'm good, Mark. How are you doing?
I am well. I am better now that I am speaking to you. You have been working professionally in Canadian media, I believe since 1984, when you started at MuchMusic.
Actually, let me stop you there.
Okay.
I came to Canada from the U.S.
From Cleveland?
From Cleveland, like in 72, 73, to Montreal to go to school at Loyola, there was a rumor that Marshall McLuhan was going to be the rector of the communications department, and that was very exciting to me. And I had applied. I had just finished with Up With People. That would have taken me out of high school, and I had just graduated, and I had been accepted by the infamous Kent State, Arizona State, and then I think Ohio University, and the last school I applied to was Loyola. And I went there in January of 73 and started in communications in September of 73, I think, 73, 74. And continued on to get my communications degree with a minor in theology and theater and drama.
You wear many hats, and
Yes.
and one of them is, I think it's fair to say, you are a music expert. We in July, on July 26, 2023, we lost Sinead O'Connor, and I'd love to get your professional take on what you think her legacy is or should be, because you were working at MuchMusic when she really came on the scene back in the late 80s and early 90s.
Yeah.
And
What
do you think her legacy is?
I think her legacy it's multifaceted. There's several areas. Okay. First time I saw her and heard her was with my friend's World Party, which was Carl Wallinger and his partner. And World Party, one of my favorite bands, one of those bands that just took over MuchMusic and took over, I think, the world probably for about 15 minutes or so, for sure. And she is, we are the revolution, baby, coming to take you home. On that video, she is in that. And so you get to see her for really the first time. And I asked Carl about her, and he said, oh, she's great, man. She's got a great record coming out. What an incredible singer, all of that. Her talent was massive, that it could not be contained by the size of the record industry. It was small compared to the talent that she had. But she recorded and she did her absolute best to share her music, her life, and her story. That's where it got difficult. She was so complicated, but she was a product and the byproduct of an ancient system that included, the Catholic Church, the royal family, all that sort of stuff rolled into this complicated ball of English, British, Scottishness that we know absolutely nothing about. And she, like the lady from the Cranberries, they claimed rightfully so that they were victims of the church. And I tend to believe them. And there's a lot of mental health things going on there. There's a lot of emotional things going on there. And to have those tools, music is only one tool to cope with it. I think what happens is that artists like Naomi Judd and Sinead O'Connor, other artists, most artists, sometimes you have to go to Roger Waters, in fact. Sometimes you have to go to the darkest places to find the brightest light, or those things that inspire you to create Dark Side of the Moon or The Wall, which was a very dark project. And when you do that, if you have the proper tools, mentally, emotionally, socially, musically, you can get out of that room. But if you don't have the proper tools, you can't get out of that room, and you need help to get out of that room. Family, friends, psychologists, knowledge, who knows? But sometimes you need help to get out of that room. I just think that she needed help, that nobody was giving her proper help. And they have so many ways to combat PTSD for for various groups of people. Look, a friend of mine from university, that I've known since I was like 14 years old. She became a psychologist and stuff. She said to me, Black people should all get free psychology for all the stuff that's been done. And my family is a military family. I think that all soldiers should get free psychology and treatment and whatever they can, because they give you the tools to go to war. They don't give you the tools to fit back into society. They make you a killer. They make you a killer, and a very good one, a very thorough one. But, musically, a genius, a mother, or they don't take that killer instinct out of you, which is difficult, and then put you back into normal society and say, you're okay, fine. And a lot of people aren't okay, fine. And you have the same thing with what's going on with various churches of any denomination, so that we don't get any hate mail from that in. But I think that for her, it was the Catholic Church and the whole British system and how they dealt with things that were difficult and improper, and just that hurt generations of young people. If the lady from the Cranberries had such a problem and she had such a problem, I'm not asking if it's real or not. If one person has the problem, it's real. So we have to deal with it on that level. I think her music was magic. I think it spoke to women and men in such an incredible way that no one else did. And I think she shared with us her truth, and then she was punished for it, i.e. what happened on Saturday Night Live. No matter what you say, she was right.
Yeah, where she tore up a photo of the Pope at the time.
She was right. It was, hey,
fight the real enemy.
Well, we're Canadians. You can go to Quebec. You can go out to the East Coast. You can find things that the church has done. And there's a reason why, all of this stuff is coming out. It was done. It happened. It was true. We should believe those people and act accordingly and let the law handle it, I think. And, when the Pope came here and did all that stuff, I mean, this is way off topic, but I don't know if it helped them. I don't know if it helped anybody. We're still looking for some sort of reconciliation. And I think they're looking for the same things that she is looking for or was looking for. It was not too much different. So we can't say that it was different from something that we know. It was pretty similar to what we've seen happening in our own communities across Canada as we look for the missing and the murdered. Right. So, and she was a voice to that, and she was a voice to her own pain. And she felt that no one was listening. I mean, being from a military family, I know my dad, my uncles, I saw people go to war and not come back. And that's a form of PTSD if they are in your family, and you get letters, and one day you don't get letters, but then you get letters and the person is completely broken, doesn't know if they can go home. Wow. This is a huge problem. And I think she was a voice to that. And it's a shame that she had to die before people begin to listen.
And on that note, we'll return after this Rainbow Country update.
Hi, I'm Gord Depp at the Spoons. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
So the Toronto International Film Festival runs in person September 7th to the 17th. And having its world premiere is the Canadian 4-part docuseries, Telling, Our Story, a visually stunning 4-part docuseries highlighting 11 different First Nations in Quebec and illuminates the rich Indigenous cultures and stories that exist within that province. The first 2 episodes of Telling Our Story will screen during the festival September 15th and 16th. Plus, the entire 4 episodes drop on CBC Gem starting September 17th. For all things festival, tiff.net. Now back to Michael Williams and 299 Queen Street West.
Hi, this is Amanda Marshall, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
There weren't any studios. You did the shows inside of the workspace.
I realized at the beginning there was nothing that we wouldn't do or play.
There was no script. There was no direction. There was nothing like this in the world.
The very first time I walked into the building, it hit me like, I need to be here.
I was this kid who was this huge fan. Now I'm here. Now I'm a part of it. It's just talking about it right now gives me goosebumps.
It was live TV, and as soon as that shot was over, it was halfway to Mars.
You could never be so far removed from the audience because they were right there looking at you.
299 Queen Street West. This is a new documentary, Canadian documentary that is essentially about MuchMusic that's coming out this fall. And so talk about what your involvement is with this documentary and your first day that's featured in the documentary.
Well, I mean, it was interesting because when Sean asked me to do the doc,
Sean Menard, the director,
yes,
and
the
producer.
director, Sean Menard, and he had another fellow with him as a co-producer as well. And they came and met me at a Starbucks. This was COVID time, so we're all masked up and everything at Starbucks in the middle of winter. And I had originally said no to Erica and an initial no to Sean. Okay, we'll meet. I'll meet you. Sure, let's go meet. We're sitting down meeting. Still no.
Why would you say no?
Because it's a very delicate thing to me for myself to be represented as who I am, not who people think I may be or not be. And sometimes people got, depending on their demeanor or their knowledge, there isn't a lot of knowledge out there about me unless I have prehistory in Vancouver and also in Montreal, none in Toronto, because I would really just drive through Toronto. I would never stay there or anything like that. And Toronto is a different place than Montreal and Vancouver. It's a different animal when it comes to the music business and stuff. And I didn't really do music business stuff in Toronto. Didn't like it that much. I wasn't fond of it. I was a real Montrealer. It's only the Canadians is the only hockey team in the world, man. So that's, I'm hardcore that way. So I said no because I didn't know these guys. I didn't know what they knew. I didn't, he says, well, here's a film I did. Check it out. Okay, but I'm talking to you now. I'm checking you out. So, and so we continue. The meeting's almost over, 3 hours or something. I'm still no. Then he hits me where I live. And he says, I didn't really know anything about you when I started this. I'm saying, you're really endearing yourself to me now. You're really making me want to say yes. And he says, as I went down the rabbit hole, I constantly heard your name. And so I started to look at your work and things like that. And it became really interesting to him, my work and how to represent it and stuff like that. And then he said the thing that made me say yes. And that was, I put my house up to do this. And that's the kind of commitment that I'm looking for in music, life, and everything else. It's balls to the wall, all out, everything. This has got to work. If it doesn't work, I'm totally screwed. Like this, I'm putting my faith in this because I believe in it that much. And if you believe in the work that I did that much, as well as the other people, but in my work, if you believed in that much that you can put your house up for this, all right, I'll go with you. I'm in. I'm going to go on that ride. Why? Because you believe. Why? Because rock and roll is like 2 chords and belief, man, and music is what I do. Knowledge is what I deal in. And if you believe that hard, I always believe that hard, everything that I do. So I was pretty good to go at that point, shook his hand, said yes, went home. He came by my place and did new voice tracks and put them to old MuchMusic clips. I'm totally secure on everything I did, said, and represented on MuchMusic. So the tail of the tape, I'm good with the tail of the tape. And then if you're talking to me, I'm good with that. And I gave it all to him and said, go do that voodoo that you do, man. Did mine. Now it's your part. I'm really excited to see the film. I've never been in a film. I've never walked into a theater and saw my presence on screen.
Yeah.
Bigger than life. And I'm really excited to see that, and for everyone else to see that too. And MuchMusic didn't end well, I think, for anyone. It just sort of fizzled and all of that, and it became a corporate conversation and all of those things. And the book hasn't been properly written on Much. Christopher Ward wrote a book on Much, which was pretty good. And most of the VJs have done their book. My book is in the works, and it's me, so it's quite different. It's more of my life in music as opposed to MuchMusic, just MuchMusic. And MuchMusic was a big part of my life, but actually it was kind of a small part too. So there's everything that went around that made it possible for me to do that. And I think that's the important part of that, as well as what I did with it. So whenever I can get that represented, and if I can put that on page, and if Sean has put that on screen, I'm going to be so everly grateful and excited. And he's excited about it. Erica and everyone else is excited. And you know what? It was proper, too, for us to say thank you and good night, Canada. And I think that's part of this, although it does open the door to other films and stuff like that as well. I'm working on my own things. I've got music and all that stuff that I've been holding on to, trying to figure out how to properly get it to people as a gift and a thank you and other things like that. I still work with Living Color and a few other bands, and it's a good day out here. And it'll be nice to bring MuchMusic back for a bright, shining moment. Take our bow, say thank you to Canada. And I do think that that there should be a special designated Order of Canada for all of us. Because I think without this work, the Canadian music industry would not be where it is now. Canadian music would not have the dominance on the planet that it does now. Because we did not just broadcast to Canada. We broadcasted to Europe. We broadcasted to America. I would go to LA and people would say, oh man, I saw you on this and that and the other. And my dear late sister, Gwendolyn Pace, she was coming home one night in Ohio where she lived. And she worked for Ford, for the president of Ford, and she would get taxi chits at night if she had to work late for a taxi or a limo to take her home. She's in the back of a car, and the guy's talking to her up front, and he's saying what he does and stuff like that. He says, on my spare time, I work in cable TV. And he says, there's a show that I watch every Saturday. Man, this guy's really, really good. And I watch it, and it's not on here, but I watch it. I pull it down. I share it with my friends and stuff like that. And this guy, he's amazing. And he says, yeah, his show is called Soul in the City. And his name is Michael Williams. And she starts laughing. And he says, why are you laughing? That's my brother. And that to me is the greatest compliment of my work. That got to my family who couldn't see it in Cleveland, Ohio. And to me, that is the compliment right there. So it'll be a joy and a pleasure for me to go out and say thank you, take a bow with my compadres and say thank you very much. I wish John Martin was still here, and thank Nancy Oliver and everybody else that I worked with, but mainly to thank Canada for accepting us as being the nation's music station for all those years.
Well said.
So I love my work, but I love the country and I love the music. And I've been blessed to have been a part of so much of it. I was just with my friend last night who works with Colin James and Joni Mitchell and Diana Krall and all those people I met long before they had stellar careers that they more than deserve. And just to be a part of that has been a wonderful experience. And it's not over yet for me. MuchMusic is over, but hey, they wouldn't sell it to me when I wanted to buy it. So I got to do whatever I do myself.
You wanted to buy MuchMusic?
Oh, well, that's a whole nother conversation. we won't go there. But of course, but we can talk about that later. But I think that we revolutionized television. We revolutionized radio, because radio had to bend their will to ours, not us to them. And fashion television came out of that, movie television. And I must say that, all respect, love, and I miss Brian Lanahan. So absolutely must. Brian was my hero. People would say, what do you want to be? And MuchMusic interviews. What do you want to be? What do you want to be? What's your measuring stick? Brian Lanahan. Brian Lanahan, the absolute best. Yeah, City Lights was my only concern for Toronto before I came was City Lights and Brian Lanahan, and to work in the office with him right across the hall. And we became wonderful friends till the day that he passed. I am so grateful for that. And for him to have nice things to say about my work, or anything to say about my work. And we would laugh so much together. And I miss him so very much, just like I miss John Martin, Dan Gallagher, and other people Gail Goldman, other people that we lost that helped to make MuchMusic what it was. Just the flavor and being in that building and the magnificent things that Moses was doing and that everybody there was doing. I mean, they were ready to broadcast a live Bob Marley concert on City TV. It didn't happen, but it almost happened. But the thing is that they cared. They wanted to. And why? Because it was there. It was there. It was great. They felt it, and it was music. And to be in a building like that, to work with people who are there for music. Wow. If you're a music fan, man, that's golden. That's the type of stuff do you say, no, I don't have to get paid. I just got to be here and feel the heat, and be there at the right time. So it was the center of the universe for that time. Yeah. And it's sad that there's nothing like it now. And what they tried to do with it, I don't know anything about that. Once I left. And I think that was pretty much so it for all of us. So this is the take a bow period. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun when we tour across Canada. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody, shaking every hand. I was driving in Horseshoe Bay yesterday, going to my birthday dinner. Somebody stopped the car and said, Michael Williams, I've always been a fan. I'll always be a fan. And thank you. And he yells at in the car window as he drives by. So I stop the car, jump out, and go and talk to him. And that's here on the West Coast, man. And, and so from here to Newfoundland, where Jeff Sterling, my old boss, lived, and Oz FM and for every radio station for anybody that turned on Much Music. Thank you. Thank you. And we're coming out to say thank you again. And so I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm really looking forward to it. And
Rap City. Did you create Rap City?
Rap City was actually an offshoot of Soul in the City because rap music was always contained in Soul in the City. In Soul in the City, that show, when it was a radio show. And what we actually did was that the way we pioneered hip hop was that I always made half of the Canadian content for my show. So I brought in artists off the street, and there's a documentary to this fact, and there is a book by Félix de Rochier, and it's called Les Racines de Hip Hop du Québec, the roots of hip hop in Quebec. And it just got shot in June, and it's centered around the radio show Club 980 on CKGM. That's where it's centered around. And that's that. And I mean, the tracks, Mark, are unbelievable. I mean, all of this stuff predates. I don't know what happened in Toronto. Hip hop is like a silo type culture. So what happens in Toronto doesn't make it to Montreal. What happens in Montreal doesn't make it to Halifax. But everybody will claim that they were the beginning of hip hop. Obviously, Toronto likes to take that title because of Drake and Cardinal and so many other things. I don't know what was going on there. Soul in the City was a 6-hour radio show from 6 until midnight. Okay, every Saturday. And so every Saturday I would do 6 hours, another 4 or 5 hours. So every Saturday I would do 11 to 12 hours of radio and not feel it. Okay, because I'm in love with the music that I'm playing. Now, urban music, one thing, I don't like that title just because I'm black. And urban music was the comfortable title to market black music to people that didn't really want to be bothered with the music or the people or the styles of it. And so they gave it that title. But I was playing everything on that show. I mean, I had Tina Turner. Back then, I introduced Tina Turner in Montreal. I interviewed Tina Turner in Montreal back in the day. The album wasn't even out yet, but the single had just come out of Let's Stay Together in the UK.
Stay Together, yeah.
Yeah, and we were playing the shit out of that on my show, and we were playing just. I
think that was produced by like Heaven 17 or something.
It was, yes, it was. Well, they used her on the BEF, British Electric Foundation. And she did Ball of Confusion, killed that stuff. It was amazing. It was better than the Temptations. And so they decided when she got new management, they did Let's Stay Together, which was nice and sweet. And then they got the song, and then they did the video. I interviewed her. She would have probably had just done Let's Stay Together and hadn't done the song. What's love got to do with it? But when she came into the room, there was nothing but magic. My interest was introducing people because it was Montreal and I had the airtime. I mean, I had 6 hours where I could play whatever I want. And that doesn't happen in radio, but that's how I do radio. You have to trust me to do what I do. And it was absolutely great. So everybody was on that show. Terry Lewis and Jimmy Jam, Gladys Knight, Stray Cats, Stevie Wonder, Tina Turner, everybody that came to town was on that show, or I could call them and they would be on the show. Peter Tosh, because I was working at a rock and roll station, Shom FM, one of the greatest stations ever, and CKGM, which was their AM station. So I'm working AM and FM simultaneously on the same day. So I finish one station at 5, go over, have a bite to eat, start another one at 6. And go 6 to midnight. And it was breaking music and playing all kinds of stuff. And Montreal was such a wonderful market. There was the Limelight. There was Robert Ouimet, who was my great friend, he was the pioneer that showed me things that I had to play. And one of the greatest DJs on the planet, he's the guy that flipped over Can't We Just Sit Down and Talk About It and made I Feel Love a hit. He was the first guy to play it at the Limelight. At the Limelight, third floor, Robert We Met, one of the greatest, the greatest Canadian DJ ever. He set it. He was just the man. There was no one else. He died last year, and he was a wonderful friend of mine. And I used to spend many nights at the Limelight between 3 and 6 a.m.
Because I know that Casablanca Records wanted Donna Summer for the I Remember Yesterday album that has I Feel Love on it. They wanted her to release a ballad, so they released Can We Just Sit Down? And on the flip side, on the B side, was I Feel Love.
Mm-hmm. And Robert took it, flipped it, got 2 copies of the single, flipped it, and made it into what it was.
Yeah.
And he got the DJ of the Award a year from Billboard that year. Wow. And he also, and he, look, the Limelight was 3 floors of magic, and it was also broadcast on the radio. It was gay, straight, and strange. The first floor, complete leather bar and chaps, baby. I'm down there sitting in front of the Limelight. There's nothing but motorcycles there. I'm saying there's bikers in this place, right? 19, 20, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I'm sitting there. First floor, gay, men's, leather bar. So the second floor is public and pedestrian. The third floor is private. And I would always go up to the third floor, and I would sit myself in the booth with Robert, and I would just listen and study and chat with him. And it was wonderful. And he did all 3 floors. So the signal went to all 3 floors and then to the radio. And he broke I Feel Love. Gino Socio Dancer, he mixed that. Star City, he did. He turned me on to early Eddie Grant stuff that I had never heard. And he was the man. He was the music monitor, you know? He was what they would call now a tastemaker, right? And the clubs in Montreal, if a club played a record, everybody had to have it. Mm. So that was and the club culture in Montreal, as you would know, or maybe you have heard, was always light years beyond Toronto.
Yeah.
I mean, light years. I worked at 1234 as a DJ. Well, mostly as a lighting person. I did lighting there first, then I did lasers. And let me tell you, when the lasers opened up, dude, and lasers hit Montreal, I got to light the Olympic Velodrome and the Olympic Stadium just with laser light. I also went to Buffalo to do a thing called the World's Greatest Disco. You can look that one up in the Guinness Book of Records, and did that with every disco artist in the world. And so that was a big part of Montreal, but so was rock and roll. We had PAG, we had the local stuff in French, and Montreal was just an incredible music culture to where if you went to Club Soda and played on a Monday, like Stanley Jordan did, and he was great, by Wednesday, the room was packed and you couldn't buy a ticket, and he could play till the next week. You know, the Jazz Festival, I worked on the Jazz Festival. It didn't matter as long as it was music to me and I could feel it. I wanted to understand it and be a part of it and possibly play it. And I also wanted to understand the music. I wanted to understand the music so much that has a producer or an engineer or a player, which I am all of those things. I wanted the person whose music I was participating in or emulating in that style, whether it's gypsy music, I work with a gypsy band, or whether it's country and western, I do that, or funk or blues or whatever, any style that I grasped the essence of the knowledge of what made it, that I respected what it was, and that my impressions of it that I created or I assisted to create were correct and on point. I wanted to always honor the originators with authenticity.
Well done.
And if I could do that, I'm very happy, and I feel that I've respected the music, but also the culture and the people around the music. You know, like you just don't go and take it and run away and this and that and the other. You honor it there, and you honor the people that do it. And if they let you play with them, you participate with respect. And I think that's a lot of what is missing in the industry. But what has come on the other side is that, look, kids that have never listened to reggae are listening to reggae. Kids that have never heard blues are listening to blues. Stylistically, we're in a multi-stylistic world, but also we don't know the styles that we're even listening to. So I think music education is so bloody important that I'm working on a series with songwriters to work with other songwriters, with musicians, to have fellowship with other musicians who are better. When do you learn? When you work with someone who's better than you are. You always learn something. And so I'm very involved in music education these days, with Long and McQuaid's and with people like Living Color and like, you know, Grammy Award winners that I would like to see tour Canada and mentor songwriters and players, do some master's classes, and really give them the keys to the knowledge to create on their own and to make it authentic, and also talk about the respect that they have to give it for it to give them what they are expecting, need, or what they feel that they can work with. And I work with a lot of musicians in terms of I'm kind of a doctor to a certain extent. Most recent thing I put out was with Willie Williams, and we did an instrumental, and we did a vocal to a tune called One More Step, or Stepping, and the trumpet is played by Herb Alpert. And that was an honor and a privilege, because Herb's my guy, man. He's honest, he's amazing, and he helps so many musicians, and that's what we're missing these days. Everybody goes for the money, but nobody goes for the, hey, wait a minute, maybe we can do this together better.
I have to say, Michael Williams, thank you so much for your time. Well said. Well done. Well VJ'd.
Mark, from the West Coast, which people call the best coast, I thank you for your time and your questions and stuff, and your interest in the film. And I hope to meet you when we go out in Toronto. You got to come, man. It's going to be a party.
There weren't any studios. You did the shows inside of the workspace.
I realized at the beginning there was nothing that we wouldn't do or play.
There was no script. There was no direction. There was nothing like this in the world.
The very first time I walked into the building, it hit me like, I need to be here.
I was this kid who was this huge fan. Now I'm here. Now I'm a part of it. It's just talking about it right now gives me goosebumps.
It was live TV, and as soon as that shot was over, it was halfway to Mars.
You could never be so far removed from the audience because they were right there looking at you.
The 299 Queen Street West documentary will be on tour across Canada in September, October, and November, and will drop on Crave later in 2023. Plus, the world premiere of the documentary will be held in Toronto, September 22nd. For more information, simply visit 299queenstreetwest.com.
Hi, my name is Joanne Vanicola, and I'm an actor and a writer, and I was first on Rainbow Country with Mark Tara on discussing the massacre at Pulse Club in Orlando. I realized how important it was for our community to have a radio station, specifically for our issues, to talk about people in the LGBTQ community, and to provide an outlet for our stories, to discuss our politics, culture, and give voice to the issues that matter to us. and of course our artists and the things that we do globally, and talk about culture. And without people like Mark Tara providing a space for this with a radio show like this, then we wouldn't have that voice. So support, tune in. Thank you.
Phone rings. I got a message from the mayor. He's going to call me back the next day. I get the call, and he said, if you'd accept, we'd like to honor you with the key to the city. There was an event later that year in May. Just a key, right? Like, key to what? A decent job, a good singing career. It's really a metaphor, but it's history. So a reporter wants to talk to me and says, well, so it's a key, right? Like, what's the big deal? I said, well, not everybody gets the key. So I looked it up, and I guess it is kind of a big deal.
The date, May 17th, 2018, when trans activist Susan Gapka made history by becoming the first trans woman to be presented with the key to the city of Toronto. By the way, past recipients include Rush and the Raptors. And just like that, this little gay journey through Rainbow Country has come to an end. For the full 2-hour episode, head over to marktara.com, where everything is connected, and hit the archives banner. To keep up to date with the show, check out the socials at Mark Tara. The podcast is available on all major platforms. Finally, I want to take this time to thank you for taking your time to be with me. Remember, we are living in days of making dreams come true, so believe in yourself. And the world will believe in you.
Hi, this is Mo Berg from The Pursuit of Happiness, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.